Deputy Executive Creative Director.
So this is Mark meets Rosie Arnold, the Deputy Executive Creative Director at BBH and current President of D&AD. Hello.
Hello.
I'm glad I didn't make a mistake during that.
Mouthful.
So can you give us a quick summary of your career to date?
It'll be really quick because I've only ever worked at BBH. That's it really.
Okay, so fine. So what year was it that you joined BBH?
Right, okay. I actually got some freelance work when I was still at art school. I went to Central St Martin's. It would have been, about 1984, I think. And I then freelanced for BBH while I was still finishing off my degree at art school, so I was really, really lucky. And then when I literally stopped my course, finished my course in the July and started at BBH the next week.
And how many people worked at BBH at that time?
Right, I was number 11.
Okay. And
there's now like 400. I joke with John Hegarty is that I'm still here as a student on placement or freelance. It hasn't really worked out yet that they could sort of move me on. But
do you still have that buzz when you come into work then, that it's the same as when you were here 28 years ago?
It's the same but different, because of course there's so many different people. I think the reason I'm still here and the reason I haven't moved anywhere else is the ethos is the same. So it really, really puts creativity at the top of everything. And I think the clients that are attracted to BBH come here because that's what they're after. And that's why I haven't moved, because that's always been the thing that I'm most interested in and get really excited about. And then if you work on different bits of business and different projects, it's a new job every week or so.
So you joined as what? What was your first?
I was an art director.
So you're an art director, yeah. And you've kind of worked up the ranks.
Worked up the ranks.
And you've been Deputy Executive Creative Director for how long?
I don't know, 3 years, 4 years.
Okay.
Something like that, maybe more. I don't know.
So
it's terrible. It kind of all merges into it.
So it still feels relatively fresh, because it's a role that you've only had for a few years.
Yeah.
Which is quite unusual these days, because the expectations for people that get into the industry is that you kind of get your experience at certain places and you progress in other agencies and you learn from other people, accounts, styles of work, management types. So what is it about here that has kind of kept you?
I think quite a lot of people at BBH actually started as graduates and things in other disciplines. I think when I started, I was really lucky in that John Hegarty, who was the only, creative director at the time, and I think the creative department was 3 teams, something like that. He just threw me in at the deep end. So there was no real distinction about being a junior art director. There was no hand-holding. And in fact, my first shoot, which was up in the Lake District when I was a student, John basically just said, off you go, get the photograph. If you don't get it, don't come back. So that was the kind of... which is great in a way. I like that sort of giving people complete responsibility to succeed and to fail.
And were you partnered up with a copywriter, or were you a solo?
Yeah, I was working with a girl who went to America at that time, and then I started work with a girl called Kiki Kendrick. So we worked as a girl team for a while, and then she moved off.
Was that unusual back then?
It was really unusual, and she really was an art director, so we were 2 art directors together, and that's why we split up. Nowadays it's not so important, but then, you really had to have copywriting skills. I think maybe that's coming back a bit, but... And she's now an actress.
Okay.
And then I've worked with the lovely Will Audrey and various people through the time. So.
And have you ever been... I'm guessing you've been headhunted and you've had temptation to leave throughout the time that you've been here. If you haven't, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Because it's common, obviously, for people that are successful to be headhunted and recognised for the work that they do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are tempted by money, they're tempted by agency reputation.
Damn, I should have gone for the money.
so what is it about here that you've kind of said no to all of those temptations?
It's always about the creative work. It's always about the opportunity to do the best creative work. And you get used to money, I believe. I don't know, because I'm still here, but really quickly. But actually the joy of coming in and working with great people, there's lovely, great, like-minded people here who do care about the creative product, and that's worth an enormous amount to me.
Okay. How would you design a spice rack for a blind person?
I think I'd want to make the hotter the spice, the spikier and the more difficult to hold the container. So I was thinking, it'd be great. You could have kind of sandpaper or kind of like really sharp, rough bottles, so that if you've got the extra hot chili, that one would be really out. Ooh, out! Can't hold that for long. So lovely smooth ones for the.
Okay.
So that's my first thought.
Fine. And that's a tricky question, but everyone approaches it differently, so it's
Yeah.
interesting to find out.
Yeah, I like the idea.
How hands-on are you then these days creatively?
It depends on the experience of the team. Funny, we just talked about that, but I think to be a good creative director, you have to encourage and give ideas away. I think one of the things, you have to be incredibly generous. So give your ideas away. Let people go off and explore it themselves, and then if you see they're getting into trouble, I kind of try and step in and guide and steer and enthuse. I think you can. I get lots of references, and I'll show people things that have inspired me, and I'll try and inspire them. And it's great if they've come up with their own inspiration, their own route. But if not, I will sort of try and gently nurture and coax them into something that I think will work.
Which superpower would you like to have, and why?
I think I'd love to fly. I think that's the sort of classic thing, isn't it? Where you dream, and if you do scuba diving, it's the closest to flying, and it would just be. I just love that. It would be brilliant. The physical rush of being able to swoop down through the streets and across those rooftops. I'd love it.
I think staying in an agency 28 years is a superpower.
Exactly.
For you, what's the best thing about agency life, apart from the kind of nurturing and things you mentioned?
Years and years ago, when I was at art school, I really envied the Impressionists, because I thought how brilliant it would be to be in a community of like-minded people who would meet every day, discuss their ideas, be jealous, be inspired, be provoked, and spurred on to do better and better work. And I just thought, I'm never going to have that. And then, God, I don't know, 10 years ago I suddenly realised that actually working in an agency, in a creative department, is exactly like that. So every day you come in, there's somebody who's done something better than you, had a better idea, found a new source, and I love that, that exchange, that group of like-minded people who are kind of encouraging each other to do better.
And who inspires you, either in this industry or outside of this industry?
Oh my God, there's so many people. That's sort of like a bottomless pit.
Are there certain kind of authors or musicians, artists?
I love Cornelia Parker. I love Grayson Perry. I love. I read an enormous amount as well. So I've just been working my way through Anthony Trollope, which is a kind of crazy thing to be inspired by, seeing he was sort of writing in the 1880s. But I'm sort of greedy for things. So I regard authors and artists a little bit like a box of chocolates, and I'll go all the way through all the different flavours right down to the nut brittle, so I've read everything that Wilkie Collins has ever written. I've read everything that Edith Wharton has written.
Until you fill up and feel sick.
Until I'm full up, and then I move on to the next thing. So, it's...
Fine. If you weren't in this industry, what do you think you'd be doing?
Oh, God. It would have to be something in the arts, because that's the thing that makes me tick. And in fact, actually, if you look up there, I took 3 months off to do a sabbatical at the Royal College and did this project which is about, I call it modern reliquaries. So I'm fascinated by how something which has got no material wealth, if it's associated with somebody you love or a famous person, it becomes incredibly valuable. The same way in the past they'd have a bit of bone and they'd say that's the relic from St Anthony, and they'd put it in this huge beautiful gold thing, chalice, and then people would worship it. And I'm fascinated by that. I'm quite a sentimental person, so I've been making objects that I let the object speak to me about how to present it, but then I've started with kind of famous people, just odd bits and rubbish from them. But that's what I'm kind of, that's what we call them really, 3D pieces. So.
Okay. And what do you do outside of work? What do you do in your free time?
Other than make weird 3D pieces. I've got a family, I've got kids, I walk my dog, I do everything that everybody else does, cinema. I mean, yeah, I love the beach.
What does someone need to do to creatively impress you? Because obviously it's quite difficult to stand out in a competitive market. And if, let's say, a junior team were looking to get into the industry, and particularly in front of you, whether you were the right person or not for them to speak to, what would they have to do to stand out? I
think these days I'm interested in people who think across different media, so that they don't just come in with print or here's a telly ad, or they've actually got an enthusiasm for an idea that expands outside just one conventional media. Because I think that I always sort of wanted to do that. When I worked on Levi's, I wanted to do the shop windows and the swing tags. I didn't want to just do the ad, and now we've got the opportunity to do that. So I like to see enthusiasm and and a breadth of thinking.
Okay. Fine. How about bribes or gifts? Has anyone sent you anything to try and get in front of you?
Yeah, but they're not normally anything of value, sadly.
Okay.
Diamond rings, that would work.
Okay. Fine. Hint, hint. If any junior teams are watching this.
Jewellery.
Yeah. Any particular Pandora? Tiffany?
No. It would be. I like Joy Everly. She's just round the corner.
Who's the most creative person you've ever had the pleasure of working with over the years?
Oh, God, so many. I mean, I worked. I'm just trying to think. I worked with this wonderful Magnum photographer called Mary Ellen Mark, she's a sort of photojournalist who was one of the original founders of Magnum. So, and she took that incredible photograph. You probably know it. It's a little 12-year-old girl sort of acting a little bit like a tart, and there's another one of two guys in the back streets of New York where one's bringing out a gun from his pocket. And she was absolutely driven and brilliant, and she's a very wiry, slender woman, quite old now, but she had these like rock solid arms because she would just take her Leica with her everywhere and just be ready to photograph, and she was a real inspiration. I loved working with her. Very, very powerful, clever, bright, interesting woman. What's been your favourite account to work on? Well, I've worked on links for about 15 years. I'm hovering high above it now, but that was a real joy to work on. Slightly worrying that I've been responsible for the seduction of so many women. Yeah. I'd like to think that it worked, and those boys out there were helped in a little way by our Links and Acts campaign. So. Fine. So if anyone's interested in sending hate mail or love mail, because you're responsible for marriages and yeah. Well, I hope that we're aiming at a slightly younger audience than
Fine. Well, everyone's getting younger these days. So. What's your favourite advertising campaign of all time? God, again, it's new every time there's a new campaign that comes up. I think that's incredibly difficult because I do. So there isn't one that stands out that because there are so many though, isn't it? It's so funny because you just think, oh God, you look back and go, I was looking at I love Volkswagen, and that's perpetually coming up with new, inventive, beautiful work. But I was looking back at you don't have to be Jewish to love Levi's, which was a fantastic campaign, or so if you go right back there, I have a lot of heart for the Levi's because that happened here, and so you were involved with seeing the new ones that came up. But there are so many that I find it quite hard to answer that. Okay, fine. Let's move on to a quick fire round. Okay. FWA or NMA? I don't know what FWA is. Are they wrestling or something? Fine. No. Do you know what? That's your answer. That's fine by me. Fruit or veg? Fruit. Can Lion or D&AD pencil? D&AD pencil. Cats or dogs? Dogs. Art directors or copywriters? Art directors. Apple or Android? Apple. Degree or no degree? Doesn't matter. Okay. Ant or deck? Again, no opinion. Muddle them up. Retained work or pitch work? Retained work, I think. Web or mobile? Mobile. Independent agencies or networked agencies? Probably independent. I still feel we're independent. Outsourced production or on-site production? On-site. And lastly, twist or stick? Twist. Thank you very much.